Now we're going to see how it works when you try to access elements within a vector. So we'll use the same vector that you saw in the workbook. So if I type whos, I'll see here's my vector right here, vec. It's 1 by 4, so it's a row vector with 4 columns in it, and those are just double values. They're default. So here we go, here's my vector, and I can access elements within the vector using this index syntax where I put the element that I want to access, its address, inside parentheses. So the indexes in my vector will always start at 1. So 1 will be the first element in the vector, and the last vector will be at the position that corresponds to the size of the vector. So vec at index 1 is 7, right, the first element in my array, and vec at index 4 is 9, or the last element in my array. I can also access anything in the middle of the array using the correct index. Now, what happens if I try to access outside the allowable indexes of my vector? Notice that if I try something that's too small, right, or something that's too big, right, I'll get errors. So if I try something that's too small, 0 or negative, I'll get an error that the index must be a real positive integer. Right? If I try something that's too big that goes past the end of my vector, I'll get an error that my index exceeds my matrix dimensions. So if you see either of those errors, you know that the index that you provided is not a valid value in MATLAB. So I can use an index to get a value that's currently stored in my vector. I can also use an index to change the value that's stored at a particular location in my vector. So let's just remind myself the current values in my vector, 7, 3, 5, and 9. I can say, update the value at location 2 to be 8. And now I see that the 3 in location 2 has been replaced with the value 8. An interesting thing to note here is that if I now try to go past the end of my vector, right, so access location 6, which doesn't currently exist, MATLAB will go ahead and it will extend my vector for me, filling in any spots between the last current spot in my vector and the spot where I'm trying to store a value with zeros. So while you can't index a location that isn't in your array to get a value back, right, you can store a value at an index that's past the current end of your array, and MATLAB will extend your array for you.